Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Well, hello there and welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde. Our theme today is Hell Hath No Fury, like a wokester triggered. And this is follow-up on the story that we broke last week that some will be aware of, but the legacy media in Idaho has been curiously silent about this story. Of course, it's the story of Travis Lohr at Kellogg High School, who spoke out of turn and saying something that apparently was so shocking and so beyond the pale that, well, as you'll see in just a moment, it caused endless upheaval. You know, cost him the right to walk at graduation, cost a local bus driver his job for daring to stand up for Travis, and yes, actually saw graduation temporarily postponed out of safety concerns. Yeah, this is from KTVB, and this is one of the very few mentions. There's been almost no follow-up to this story, but the headline tells us Kellogg High School postpones graduation due to safety concerns. More than 30 students walked out on Friday in protest of a disciplinary decision for one of the seniors. As a result, Saturday's graduation ceremony is postponed. Now, that's pretty tame. And, you know, the article did include, in fact, the quote. By the way, if you're wondering, you know, what was it that Travis Lohr said that was so incendiary and so volatile that it could cause this kind of a reaction? Well, he said, boys are boys, girls are girls. There is no in between. Now, this has put the administration there at the Kellogg High School into a very interesting quandary. First of all, they punished Travis by telling him, you will not walk for graduation. His principal said, now, and it's not about what he said, it's the fact that when these seniors were supposed to be dispensing, you know, some gem of life wisdom or advice to the underclassmen as part of their graduation. You know, some schools, your senior quote is in the yearbook. This is one where they had a chance to deliver it in graduation. So at the rehearsal, you know, there was apparently, I don't know what it was he was supposed to say, but he went off script, and this is what the principal maintained. Well, it's because he went off script that it therefore became a disciplinary problem. Now, the trouble is, that was a lie, because in a subsequent phone call, or actually a voicemail, which was recorded, the principal said very clearly, no, it was because what he said was hurtful and hateful and disruptive, and boys are boys, girls are girls, there is no in between. Now, I'll grant you, in a very woke environment, I could see where those would be triggering words. But for the normal people out there in society, which is the vast majority of society, it's just not that big of a deal. In fact, it's the reality that most of us grew up with and most of us would still acknowledge as an objective, even scientific truth. But oh, the drama that went on. So Travis was denied the chance to walk last Saturday. That was one thing. There was a little protest that took place out in front of Kellogg High School, as the article, the headline from KTVB mentions, about 30 students. There were other members of the community. About 100 people total showed up. One of them was a bus driver for the district. Now, he wasn't on the clock. He was there on his own time as a private citizen. He was actually taken in and fired that same day. And when asked, well, is this about, is this about my free speech? Oh, no, it's not about your free speech. It's the fact you're a district employee. But he says, but I'm not on the clock. Well, you're on district property. So apparently, you know, the district is exerting some kind of ownership that goes beyond, you know, just when he's actually actively working and earning a wage. And they fired him, which, you know, shows you the absolute sensitivity, the fragileness of the woke. And it gets even better. Because of that small protest and because of the pushback, and I think the rightful pushback that district officials received, the sheriff in that county said, well, we're going to have to cancel graduation. And this was due to a very unspecified threat from some outside group that is known to cause disruption or to cause violence. And so there it was, the threat of, well, because people said no, or because people said that we may be wrong, there's a threat of violence. So for everyone's safety, that's why we're going to have to do this. Again, look at the headline here. Due to safety concerns. Let me translate what that means. That means, oh my gosh, someone said no, or someone said enough to the woke agenda. And that's enough to constitute a safety concern. Now, thankfully, cooler heads have prevailed in the sense that you can get a good take on this, although you're not going to hear much about it at all from Idaho's legacy media. The silence of the sheeps is overpowering because it reflects so badly. The mask has slipped. And the sheriff, by the way, who declared that safety concern, that sheriff is a woman who is married to another woman who happens to teach at Kellogg High School. Now, look, you can try and twist that any way you want to make it make sense. Well, she's just doing the right thing as the sheriff to stand up for everybody's safety. But it just looks like more wokeness covering for earlier wokeness. And it's like it's a great big Borg. And it's very upset with people who refuse to be assimilated. Travis refused to be assimilated. Wayne Hoffman from the Idaho Freedom Foundation has a wonderful piece on their website about Kellogg schools obviously mistreating Travis Lohr for being unwoke. Here are a few things that Wayne points out. He says Kellogg, Idaho's government schools were bad academically before their mistreatment of student Travis Lohr and bus driver Dakota Melieu. And the district is now giving up the evidence that there's a lot more going on here. Let's start with the fact that the Kellogg School District is an academic disaster. In the district, half to two-thirds of students can't read, write, or do math at grade level, according to the most recent test scores of students who attend school there. Now, that's not to single out Kellogg, because honestly, that's true of most, but not all, government schools. However, school officials reacted to Travis and the subsequent protest with a petulance that Wayne says I wish was uncommon in government education, but is sadly very normal. We've encountered the same kinds of things all over Idaho and across the nation. We've seen how schools treat parents and students for stating their opinions about what's in a school library or for exercising any kind of support whatsoever for non-woke beliefs. And we've seen the lengths that school districts will go to rig elections and protect their monopolies. He says it's undisputed that Travis, a graduating senior, was supposed to offer some inspiring words to an assembly of high school students. Instead, he went with a guy is a guy and a girl is a girl. School officials largely stuck to their story that it wasn't the content of his comment that cost him a suspension from school and a chance to walk across the stage to accept his diploma at graduation. They said it was the fact that he went off script, as if that would make it better. Wayne points out students always go off script. They've probably gone off script in Kellogg in past years, and he says, I'd also bet Travis wasn't the only one who had some off-the-cuff comments for their fellow students. He says, I believe it was the content that got him in trouble because if Kellogg were suspending students and banning them from accepting their diploma at graduation every time they went off script, we would have heard about it by now. The words he spoke were the deciding factor. And yes, there is, in fact, a voicemail from the principal that would indicate that this is so. Wayne points out that Travis is 18. Even if Travis were a terrible student who doesn't listen to teachers, he said nothing offensive or illegal, except in the minds of the school's authoritarians. If we pretend for a moment that they're not woke, it means all we're left with is that these school officials chose to punish a grown adult because they didn't authorize his remarks. They consider that action a disciplinary matter. I mean, look, wokeness kind of appeals to the control freaks among us. Well, here it is on full display. And they are just trying like crazy. Well, there's safety concerns now, and because people said no. Well, there's this danger of violence. That's an authoritarian move, says Wayne Hoffman, such that we don't know for sure that Dakota, the bus driver, lost his job because of his attendance at the protest defending Travis. Let's just say firing an employee for free speech, especially conservative free speech, seems very on brand for the school. It's really pathetic. And yet here we are. This isn't some big metropolitan school district. This isn't West Ada. This isn't right in the heart of Boise where you would expect to find, a fair amount of wokeness. This is small town Idaho. This is where, this is part of the reddest part of a red state. And yet this is what's happening. That woke mind virus has infiltrated its way into so many of the institutions. It's just ridiculous. Back to Wayne's comment. He says, it's enough for me to wonder if the temporary decision to cancel graduation wasn't another psyop by the school intended to make Travis and Dakota look bad and make their friends angry that graduation was canceled. It makes me skeptical of Shoshone County Sheriff Holly Lindsay's claim that a group known for violence during protest was en route to Kellogg to protest at graduation. And I think Wayne rightly calls her out here. If there really is a group, she should have said who it was, so we can evaluate the veracity and the seriousness of the threat. It's also interesting Pearson said something more notably specific regarding the decision. We could just not take the risk of too many outside people coming in and it being ground zero for a riot. Wayne rightly points out, I don't think the sheriff actually said that they were threatening to riot. But, this is the implication. This is that bogus predicate that we have to be on guard for. And KTVB buys in, well, it's safety concerns, so you fill in the blanks. We're not going to be specific because, after all, these are safety concerns. And if someone says safety, we're all supposed to, like little sheep, and say that, well, okay, whatever it takes. Take my freedoms, take my rights, take whatever you need to. More tax money, please take it. Just make me feel safe. By the way, they did hold the graduation as scheduled on Saturday. They just did it, wink, wink, in secret and made sure that Travis was not allowed to attend. But holy cow, the lengths that people will go to because he spoke an approved opinion. He spoke something that just flies in the face of decency. Oh, it happened to be true, but, that's no defense. Therefore, hell hath no fury, like a woker triggered. By the way, here's some good news. Idaho Freedom Foundation reports the Give, Send, Go campaign they set up for Travis Lohr raised over $8,500. And they said, we're incredibly impressed by the kindness and generosity of our supporters. Idaho Freedom Foundation President Wayne Hoffman will present a check to Travis in a few days on behalf of everyone who contributed. My understanding is there is also a Give, Send, Go campaign for Dakota, the bus driver, who, for showing up and waving an American flag, found himself on the wrong side of wokeness as well. I really hope it turns out well for him, and that, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not encouraging litigiousness as, the answer to everything, but this may just be the kind of case where some good legal pushback would be appropriate. And if it happens, I hope that those who pushed this solution, will, they'll get what's coming to them good and hard in a courtroom. All right. I want to share with you where this leads, because this if it can happen in Kellogg, it can happen in any school district across the state. And Bill Colley from News Radio 1310 in Twin Falls gets right to the point. Woke school district is cause for school choice in Idaho. He's absolutely correct. Bill says Travis Lohr didn't graduate with his classmates. The Kellogg teenager was barred from participating in the ceremony by the woke school administration. The Idaho Freedom Foundation has the details if you click here. For a quick synopsis, he made an off-the-cuff but true statement about biology to his classmates. If you're born a guy, you'll always be a guy, and anything else is make-believe. Some icing on the cake for any snowflakes is that a bus driver was fired by the school district. That driver supported Lohr. Now, Bill Colley says, you know how this will be viewed in administrative offices at Kellogg schools. They'll raise the moat. They'll claim bigoted conservatives are inciting violence. Typical move from the leftist academics we allow to run government schools and indoctrinate our children. This is taking place in one of the deepest red corners of Idaho. Kellogg is in Shoshone County. And Bill says, I visited there. The place is home to real men, the kind who in the past often sacrificed their lives in silver mines. He says, this is why Idaho needs school choice. Pronto. No more arguments from legislators wholly owned by the unions representing teachers. You were sent to Boise by your constituents to represent their interests, the most precious of which is their kids. And he says, I don't give a damn if some spineless member of Senate leadership worries he won't win re-election with special interest money. If you campaigned with promises to moms and dads and now represent lobbyists, you're a bald-faced liar. I suggest you either put your selfish interests aside or step aside. This may just be the added incentive to get school choice really back on track. And that's a good thing. It's just sad that, there has to be some wreckage along the way in the form of people's lives disrupted and people's reputations tarnished for the sake of upholding some woke ideal. By the way, let me show you just a couple of headlines that seem to support this. It's Pride Month, in case you hadn't noticed. I know it's hard to believe, but yes, it's Rainbow Ramadan. And if you hadn't caught on, now the headlines are telling us that the most marginalized groups are in so much danger. Check out a couple of these headlines here. This is from the Times News. As conservatives target schools across the U.S., LGBTQ plus kids and students of color feel less safe. Now, this is actually an Associated Press story, but I'm going to give you a couple of excerpts just to see the depths of depravity that people will go to try to portray this as, oh, it's so terrible that someone would say no to the woke indoctrination that is finding a home in our schools. The article says, as conservative politicians and activists push for limitations on discussions of race, gender, and sexuality, actually what they're pushing for is limitations on left-wing or Marxist-based discussions of race, gender, and sexuality. In other words, Marxist dogma is not finding as welcome a place as it thought it would. Some students say the measures targeting aspects of their identity have made them less welcome in America's schools, the one place where all kids are supposed to feel safe. Yes, unless, of course, you are a white Christian heterosexual male or something other that's not part of the woke hierarchy. Let's continue our sob story. Books have been pulled from libraries. What kinds of books? Books that teach kids the delights of anal sex? Books that teach them to explore their sexuality or question their own gender? Gee, I wonder why anybody would object to those being on the shelves of school libraries. Some schools have insisted on using the names of transgender students that they had before they transitioned. Oh, no. I mean, did brave soldiers die on the beaches of Normandy for that? Please. And teachers wary of breaking new rules have shied from discussions related to race, gender, and other politically sensitive topics, even as students say they desperately need to see their lived experiences reflected in the classroom. Now, that is some first-class Marxist claptrap right out there in the open for everybody to see. I come to school so that I can see my lived experience in the classroom. No, you're there to learn. You're there to learn the basics. Reading, writing, arithmetic, history, which, by the way, can include some of those learned experiences. But, I know Jim Jones, former Attorney General, likes to pretend, wow, we're not teaching real history. Well, Jim, how would you feel about we teach what happens when people allow government to take away the guns from certain groups of people? Can we teach about the Turkish genocide against the Armenians, or the Soviet Holodomor, or China's Great Leap Forward? Anything like that? No? That kind of history doesn't really interest you? See, they want the woke, favorable to Marxism version of history. So let's not pretend that this is somehow denying people's existence. But wait, it gets better. Among those students that feel marginalized, a transgender student at a Pennsylvania school where teachers are directed to use students' birth names. Can you imagine the inhumanity? A bisexual student in Florida who sensed a withdrawal of adult support. Who sensed a withdrawal? Did some adult explicitly state it? No, but I sensed it with my woke superpowers, apparently. And Harmony, a black student outside Nashville, alarmed by efforts to restrict lessons on black history. What exactly does that mean? We're given no context, but if we're not being taught, that it's Wakanda forever or something like this, does that mean that somehow we're not learning black history? Again, all of these are woke talking points. For these and other students of color and LGBT plus kids, it can feel like their very existence is being rejected. No, it's the ideological filter that is being rejected, and rightly so, because it leads to a place of half-truths, untruths, and distorted history that teaches some kids you need to hate yourself because of the color of your skin. Or there's a guilt that you carry with you even though you never owned a slave or weren't related to anybody who did. How is that a healthy thing? It's not. We can just bravely say it. At times, students who speak out against new policies have been targeted for harassment. Oh, so when they go to impose these woke ideas and ideals on other people, some people say no. Now, they may have different ways of saying it, but wow, how dare anybody speak out, and target them for harassment, which is how that's being portrayed. In Williamson County, Tennessee, where Harmony goes to school, a political action committee accused another high school's black student union of promoting segregation. Well, did they have a separate graduation just for the black students? Because I got news for you. If that's what they did, and if that's what they're advocating for, if there's a safe space that's only for people whose skin color is this pigmentation, then they are advocating for segregation. Congratulations, guys. You've just reinvented Jim Crow, and you're just calling it by another name. That PAC, by the way, posted the time and place of the student group's meeting on social media. So, elsewhere, trans and non-binary students who have spoken up about bullying have faced only more insults on social media. Now, look, we can disagree, But if this is what passes for why these schools are becoming such a dangerous place, someone will disagree with you. Someone might insult you on social media. Please. This is the real world. There's going to be disagreement in the real world. If your worldview, if your ideology is so fragile that it cannot countenance the slightest bit of dissent, or even someone saying, you do you, but I don't believe that. The problem is you. It's not them. I can't believe that we're actually training students who are embracing this kind of learned helplessness. Oh, and by the way, here are a few more headlines to drive home. The corporate media's attempt to reject the hate. Oh, look at North Idaho's LGBTQ plus community after Patriot Front arrests. You remember this was a year ago? Pride in the Park is the first of a series of events the North Idaho Pride Alliance is planned in June. Now, what makes this remarkable is they're taking this in-depth, decisive, and an insightful look at something that never actually happened. Well, there was a potential disruption. There was a planned disruption, which never happened. So, what other disruptions that never happened, should we also be wringing our hands over and looking at the Pride Festival in light of, the fact that aliens from outer space didn't land and tell us that, hey, this is all really cool. Wow. If they're going to work with this kind of stuff, they should at least stick to the realm of reality. But of course, reality doesn't always look favorably upon, woke ideology and dogmas. So, all right, we'll pretend that this is a big story. Patriot Front showed up and, they could have disrupted. But let's not forget, they didn't. The disruption never took place. It's another little mechanism to leave you feeling, fearful and, look how picked on we are. Yes, I can see how picked on you are as I see rainbow flags waving from every corner of every corporate logo in the country. As I look at the calendar and I see 100+ days set aside for LGBTQ history, for awareness of this and that and the other, and a full month set aside in June. Oh, it must be awful. I mean, academia supports the LGBTQ movement. Business supports it. Government supports it. A lot of religions seem to support. At least we seem to see that a lot. Media fully on the side of it. It must be terrible to have so many institutions that are against you. I mean, with you. Well, you get the point. By the way, here's another alarming headline. Again, this is intended to incite fear and a sense of unsettledness in our hearts. Hate groups, political influence growing, watchdog group says. Now, these are the professional alarmists at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Their job is to go out there and label people. That's a hate group. That's a hate group. You're a hate group. Anybody to the left of the young Octobrists or the Red Guard, it's a hate group. You stand up for freedom? I mean, look at this. 1,200 anti-government hate extremist groups active across the United States in 2022. The only addendum that you need to add to that claim is according to whom? And if it's according to acolytes of Karl Marx, I'm thinking you could probably take that with a hefty grain of salt. Is it really the threat that they're portraying it to be? Maybe. But at the same time, since Pride Month is going on, this is a real thing. Who thinks this is a good idea? The shirt says trans kids are sexy. Apparently to tatted up dudes who are willing to put this out there in public. How is this anything but an endorsement of pedophilic sentiment? And yet there are adults who would feel ashamed. Well, I don't really know if I want to push back. I might offend somebody. Trust me, if there's a time to offend somebody, this would be that time. And notice how often it's focused on school children. Connor Boyack just gets right to the chase. This is an actual quote from Adolf Hitler. When an opponent declares, "I will not come over to your side," I calmly say, "Your child belongs to us already. What are you? You will pass on. Your descendants, however, now stand in the new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else but this new community." Think about that for just a second. Now, this doesn't mean that all school teachers are activists, but you would be shocked at the number of activists that are finding their home in government-run public schools across the country. And as we just saw in Kellogg High School, little Kellogg, Idaho, it's not just in the schools. It's within law enforcement. It's within their school administration. Yeah, the media. Why are they aiming this at the kids? I mean, I would tell you, go on Twitter and just take a look at some of the different videos that are coming out in celebration of Pride Month. There's one of a bunch of kids going to school. I believe this was in California. I mean, it has to be California, right? Only California would be this brazen. But these kids, they're walking in. All the teachers are wearing rainbow-colored attire. There are unicorns. There are flags. They're playing music. And it's just one big gay celebration. And it's exactly the kind of thing that people on the political right were ridiculed for warning about just a few years ago. We don't want to see this kind of thing in our schools. Oh, come on. That kind of thing's never going to happen. But the video proof is there that it is happening. Another was a parade in, I believe, North Hollywood. Maybe it was West Hollywood. A family-friendly pride parade. That's their words. But here you have a pickup driving along, and there's a couple of guys in the full leather S&M regalia. One guy is chained to kind of an approximation of a cross in the back of the truck, bare buttocks showing, as the other guy's whipping him with a cat of nine tails. Yeah, it doesn't get much more family friendly than that. I mean, this is some really sickening stuff. And parents who draw the line and say, look, you are not going to subject my kid to that. You need school choice. You need to exercise your choice, and it may involve pulling your kids out of school. I mentioned this earlier in the week, and someone responded on Twitter, well, not everybody has the luxury of doing that. And I agree. It's a very tough choice, and it will come at some cost. How important is your kid, though? I know parents that would go to the ends of the earth to protect their kids from predatory behavior. The problem is when that predatory behavior cloaks itself in the respectfulness and the rectitude of, public education, somehow it gets a pass. Well, a few people are paying attention. More people need to be paying attention. And just in case, you're missing the point here. It's not a matter of, hey, we just want to be inclusive. We just want to live and let live. We just want our place in society along with everybody else. That's not what's being asked for. As our good friend Jim points out here, make no mistake. The people who are demanding you accept and tolerate their way of life passionately hate you for yours and are relentlessly seeking to destroy it. And that's really what it comes down to. This is about destroying the values on which Western civilization was raised. And to the woke, well, that would include slavery. They fixed that problem some time ago. I don't know if you heard about it, but there was actually kind of a conflict between the states, and there was a Civil Rights Act, and there was, amendments to the Constitution. All that stuff was fixed by other people at the time when slavery actually existed. So why do we insist that, but it's our problem, and now you owe reparations, and you should always feel guilty and do exactly as I say? I'm sorry. That's a load of garbage. That's just weaponized guilt being wielded to make people do something that they wouldn't normally do. But gee, if you're telling me you might think I'm bad if I don't, I guess I have no choice. But you do have a choice. And that choice is to emphatically reject what the woke are demanding, particularly reject what they're demanding of our kids. Look, there can be no good reason for which they're targeting the kids. I think, the quote from Hitler for some people, well, there we are, Godwin's law, you've invoked Hitler. There's a reason that he stated it so boldly. And there's a reason that he's not the only totalitarian. Yeah, he was a National Socialist, but you know what? The commies believe in that same kind of totalitarianism, and they believe in getting to the kids as young as possible, training them, maybe not to be perverts. Some, that might be their goal, but generally to be little leftists, active little members of the party who can be counted on to deny and to throw away everything that came before, or at least pronounce it as bad, and to separate themselves from their parents. That sounds really unhealthy. So I don't know what all the solutions are, but I know this is something that's not going to go away just by us wishing that it weren't so. Hopefully you can see a little bit more clearly that there are some very real things at stake here, starting with our kids. So just sitting back and pretending like it ain't so, that's not an option. Thankfully, you will find there are people on your side. Check out what you have in terms of help from various groups, and for heaven's sakes, do not trust legacy media to tell you the way things are. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
Indoctrination.
That's right.
Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot.
That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see.
Dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.